This episode of Men of Prestige before they try to get into a relationship, because that person is comfortable. At the very minimum, they're comfortable in that it's going to be hard for them to create space for another human being in a healthy way, right? But anyway, times and seasons. There is something called prime. So what you call settle for less 10 years ago is not the same thing today. So at some point, settle for less, it's not the same thing. It's something is moving. Multiple variables are moving. Are you factoring all these different variables with respect to the times and seasons that you're living in? Are you 45 and you're still talking about settling for less when there's a girl in front of you that's clearly a high value, quote unquote, okay? Because I hate that phrase as well, right? This girl right there, you keep attracting her, but you keep thinking you deserve better. Yes, you gentlemen do that as well. It's not just women that do that, okay? Number two, don't settle for less in a relationship. 5 reasons why this is a terrible advice for a man. 5 reasons. I know, I'm sorry. I know you've heard that all over the place, but I promise you what I'm saying is not absolute, but I think it's interesting insights that you should hear when it comes to settling for less in a relationship, right? I'll be the first to admit, quote, I'll be the first to admit I've been guilty of telling my homies, don't settle for less in a relationship. Find someone who will treat you right and won't break your heart, right? You deserve better than what you're getting, right? Do you? You deserve happiness with a woman that wants to take care of you and give back as much love as she receives from you. But when I started reevaluating this advice, it didn't sit well with me anymore. In fact, it made me sick inside, because what I was really doing was discouraging them from pursuing their own happiness. Out of fear they will end up lonely or hurt in the process. You know, happiness is from the inside out in its raw form, right? Obviously, people around you, the kind of wife you get with, your girlfriend, can enhance, you know, but the key word is enhancing, right? If there's nothing to enhance, you're still going to be sad. You're going to be angry, you know, with the world, you know. So happiness comes from the inside out. I think we know that, right? So with that being said, don't settle for less in a relationship. There are 5 reasons why I think this is a terrible advice, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, right? When you say don't settle for less, number 5, when you say don't settle for less than what? This is a question that's never answered. Less than what are we talking about? Settle for less. Most people just use that statement, don't settle for less. Less than what? Less than what you deserve, or less than what you're getting, right? It's like less than what? That is a loaded question that never gets answered. So it makes the advice stupid off the bat. You see what I'm saying? Less than what? Don't settle. Now, I don't want to be intellectually, how do you use the phrase, right? Disingenuous, right? Or I'm trying to, I get the context when people say don't settle for less. But some people literally take that literally. They end up in their 30s, 36, 37, 47, and they're wondering why they're still single, because they are picky. Now, I do think you should go out and get the best. But if you're going to do that, please make sure you answer the question less than what. Please. So whenever I advise you next, maybe I will record a video about 200 videos from now, and I'll say don't settle for less, right? And ask me and say, what do you mean settle for less than what, right? Okay. Or maybe you have the answer and say, oh yeah, my last relationship, I was being a pushover. I got to make sure that I'm not being a pushover. Now we're talking, right? Something that will hurt you. But the problem is that there's a lot more variables. Let's get into it. Number 4, other variables. There are other variables. So when you say settle for less, the person that's advising you usually don't know what is going on in your relationship. They don't know the details. In fact, they haven't taken the time to ask you. In fact, the only thing they've heard, if they've heard anything, is your pain points. Basically, you expressing how painful your relationship is, which is one side of the story, because you cannot recognize pain properly, accurately, unless you know the pleasure, right? Unless you know what pleasure looks like in that particular relationship. So this is another problem. What are the other variables? What makes you think that this relationship you're in is less? A person who's advising you should know that before they advise you, and if that advice is ever going to be useful. But if they have a distorted, skewed vision of what is actually going on, which is usually your story, because that's just one side of the story, I don't care who you are, right? Then that advice is terrible advice. Okay, because frankly, all of us at some point, there's only so much we can see when we're the one in the forest and we're the subject of the matter. Number 3, times and seasons, right? So if you're in your 20, some people call it prime. I don't like calling it prime because we're humans, right? But let's be real, prime. In your prime, 23, 24, 25, men or women, okay? Some people, here's the part that I disagree. They say men getting their prime in 47 says woo. What do you mean? What do you mean? He's 47 and single? That's not prime, bro. Okay, it's not. Okay, if anything, that man is carrying baggages. No disrespect, and they better go through proper healing before they try to get into a relationship, because that person is comfortable. At the very minimum, they're comfortable in that it's going to be hard for them to create space for another human being in a healthy way, right? But anyway, times and seasons. There is something called prime. So what you call settle for less 10 years ago is not the same thing today. So at some point, settle for less, it's not the same thing. It's something is moving. Multiple variables are moving. Are you factoring all these different variables with respect to the times and seasons that you're living in? Are you 45 and you're still talking about settling for less when there's a girl in front of you that's clearly a high value, quote unquote, okay, because I hate that phrase as well, right? This girl right there, you keep attracting her, but you keep thinking you deserve better. Yes, you gentlemen do that as well. It's not just women that do that, okay? Number 2, be like water. It's not settling for less. Flow. Be open-minded. A lot of times it's not settling for less is real. It can happen. You may not see good in yourself and you keep attracting terrible situations, but a lot of times it's like you're fixated on something that's not realistic. You think you deserve better than what you are getting, or and because you're doing that, you don't even have any kind of room to you don't have any room in you to say, let me work on myself, right? Because you don't think anything is wrong with you. Remember, you're the one that's saying, I don't want to settle for less, or you got the advice, so you don't think anything is wrong, right? But if you stop saying that to yourself, maybe you will finally look in the mirror and say, hey, something about me is attracting what I'm getting for the past 27 years. Let me look in the mirror and look a little closer. And maybe there's something there, maybe not, but maybe there is something there. Supposed to be in full denial and not even taking the time to do the work. So be open-minded, and Bruce Lee calls it be like water. Number 1, the masculine frame as usual, okay? The scriptures, sorry to quote the scriptures if you're not a religious person, but it works, it says find a wife. It doesn't say find the wife, okay? It says find a wife. That means ultimately, because when you say find the wife, that means that wife that has your happiness, right? That's going to make you feel whole, right? But you as a man, it's your job to find a wife. And if you're having a hard time finding a wife, there's only one more thing we should do. Maybe a few more things, but at least this one thing, right? We got to look in the mirror and hold ourselves accountable. Say, hey, there are wives out here. It's not like, no, not all women are wives. I know that, but there are wives out here. How come you keep attracting the masculine ones? If that's what you want to call them, why is it that you keep attracting them? What is it about you that keeps attracting them? Oh, you don't want to answer that question, right? No, you have to answer that question, okay? The masculine goes after what he wants. There's a marketplace. He finds it, okay? And once you find it, see, selling for less is not a thing because you found what you want. That just doesn't exist, okay? You realize there's options for you, right? If you don't feel like there's options for you, that's another problem entirely. But there are options, hopefully, right? You find a wife and you go for it, right? And if you're looking for the wife, of course, now suddenly don't settle for less. It's relevant. It's a relevant phrase, right? Right. So